welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Nyambura and this is 100 on Books. Today I'm going to be talking about the books I finished in August of 2023. Yes, you heard me. I'm almost done with these monthly wrap-ups I've been doing very late. So the first of those books was Aya, Life in York City, which collects Aya number 1, 2, and 3 by Margaret Abouet, translated by Helge Dasher, and illustrated by Clement Dubrery. So this is a collection of bande dessinée, comic books that's set in 1978 Cote d'Ivoire. The country is thriving, and so we're following Aya and her friends Bintu and Ajwa as they navigate life, love, sex, sexuality, education, family life, and so on. I really enjoyed it, and the moment I was done, I put the next book in the series on hold at the library, so I can't wait to get to it because it's so much fun. And I don't read a lot of African graphic novels, so it was just such a pleasure to read this and to be reading it in translation. I read a women in translation book. I didn't realize because the whole time I've been telling myself I didn't read any women in translation in Women in Translation Month, but this is it. It fits the bill. Next is the next book I finished was Men Who Hate Women, From Insults to Pickup Artists, The Truth About Extreme Misogyny and How It Affects Us All by Laura Bates. I found out about this book from Pod Save America, from Pod Save America's YouTube channel. At some point, I don't know how I went down that rabbit hole, but then I saw the beginning of this video where they interview Laura Bates, and she's talking about how, hey, young boys are saying and doing very misogynistic things, and this is coming from the manosphere, and these ideas that circulate in the manosphere. And if you watch, say for instance, FD Signifier and a bunch of more leftist channels, I'm going to post a link to FD Signifier's Manosphere video down below, and the video where Laura Bates is being interviewed also down below. There is something about how boys, and I've also observed this from watching stuff on TikTok or on YouTube and whatever, there's a way in which boys are being spoken about and to on the internet that means that they're almost primed to disrespect and dislike women and girls. And this book can be quite hard to read at times, but I think it's such a useful read. The next book I finished was Lucky Girl by Irene Moshemi Derito, which was narrated by Busukula Masakwa. Sorry, the neighbors seem to be dragging something upstairs. Yeah. I picked this book up because the author had an article in Literary Hub. I'm going to post a link to that article down below, where she basically had a variation of the old Black Africans are not like African Americans shtick, which it gives me the ick, as the kids say, because blackness is as blackness is across the world, and also anti-blackness is the coin of the realm. Is that the expression, Tom? The coin of the realm?
Yeah.
In so many parts of the world. So really being like, we were not colonized. We were not slaves, we were colonized, so we are different, etc. Like, that's how we had hill to choose to die on. But anyway, in this book we're following Soila, who is a Kenyan girl who goes to school in New York as a way to break away from her family. She has a very like sheltered background, and her mom is one of those ones who really puts her claws into her child's life and will not let go. And as a person who grew up in Kenya, lives in Kenya, this book was just, it rang hollow in some parts, and in some parts it made sense. And I think that's to be expected of books that are set where one is from. But I think also there is a dearth, honestly, of books set here that makes sense to people who are from here, especially if they're published elsewhere, as this book is. For instance, Soyla's mother is painted as the sort of Catholic who self-flagellates. I've heard from a bunch of people, some of whom are Catholics, who grew up here, who are like, this makes no sense to us. Like, it doesn't resonate. And I mean, I'm not one to say whether or not it makes sense, but it did not ring true for me as a person who went to Catholic school and so on. I don't know what's happening behind closed doors, of course, but anyway. And I don't know, like there are times when Soila would just come across as this very naive person which did her no favors, but we move regardless. On the whole, it was well written, just, you know. Oh, one more thing. Again, going back to there's something about a book whose context one knows to whatever extent. So, for instance, the way the African accent, the Wakandan accent, okay, you know the one was deployed here was just so irritating at times. Like, what is the reason, you know? And I know what the reason is. The reason is to convey Africanness, but like, I don't know, just hire readers from the country or from the region where books are set so that we don't have those incidences. Those are my 2 cents. Next was Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher, which I read as a hybrid and is narrated by Robertson Dean. I found out about this book from Makena Maganjo, who heard about it and she interviewed Ayobami Adebayo, who's currently, as you may know, on the Booker Prize long list. So this is a hilarious epistolary novel that features Jay Whittaker, who's a professor at a small, like, liberal arts college, or a small college in, I think in America it should be the Midwest. I have no sense of American geography. And he writes a bunch of letters to his colleagues, letters of recommendation, especially lots of letters of recommendation. And so we find out more and more about him through these letters till the very end. It's the first of a trilogy, which I then proceeded to read, but more on that later. The next book I read was, and this is the only physical book I read this month, was 43 Old Cemetery Road, Dying to Meet You by Kate Klise and illustrated by M. Sarah Klise or Klise. I'm not sure how to pronounce their names. Yeah, so this, I just realized as I was getting ready to make this video, is also an epistolary novel. It's a children's book which follows this grumpy writer as he heads to what's thought of as a haunted house to try and finish a book that's way overdue. When he gets there, he finds a child in the house who's been left by his parents. His parents don't seem to like him very much, and so they've left him there, him and the ghost of the house. So the man initially is not friendly towards them, but becomes friends with them, and he discovers so much about himself. They all discover so much about themselves in the process, and it's such a lovely, touching book, and I'd love to read the other books in this series. Next was What Napoleon Could Not Do by D.K. Nuro. This follows 3 people, 2 of whom are married, 2 of whom are siblings. So all of them are dealing with America as dream, as destination, as desire. So one of them is a brother to the other. 2 of them are siblings, as I said. One of this brother in the sibling pair has tried multiple times to go to the US without success. The sister lives in the US, but she can't get a green card. And the third character is the sister's husband, who refuses to talk about his time in Vietnam and is haunted in many ways by that time, his time during the war and so on. This book was originally a bit of a slow read. We are made to feel like one of the main characters' sexual predilections. Predilections? Is that a word? Predilections, yes, is a thing, but it didn't really capture my attention. But the parts with the sister and her husband really drew me in, and once I was able to get over that hump, it was a good ride. I could say more, but Sean the Book Maniac has a video in which he he zoomed with a person whose name I cannot remember right now. I'll put her name down below in the description box. But anyway, the two of them talk about this book, and I think they did a good job of sort of talking about what it's about and some of the highlights and lowlights of the book. The next book I finished was The Shakespeare Requirement by Julie Schumacher. I did this as a hybrid, and it's narrated by the author. This continues the J. Fitger series, and in this book, Fitger is now chair of the English department, and they're trying to get enough quorum to be able to get funding for the academic year without much success, because the lead professor of English, whose focus is Shakespeare, is upset that there's no Shakespeare requirement, as the title suggests, for freshmen. For freshmen. So the book basically continues as such, while he's trying to figure out how to deal with that conundrum, how to keep everyone happy, and so on. He's not a likable character, Jay. So he's not one of those people who's going to schmooze people into agreeing with whatever. He's not one of those people who's going to schmooze people into agreeing with whatever plans he has. He really has to work hard to get them to have any sort of unanimous decision, but the way he gets to it is really, really interesting, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Next was Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spires. I did this as a hybrid read, and it's narrated by Adenrele Ojo. This book it's a collection of short stories that follow colored people. No, that follow Black people in various settings, various times, various interactions, and so on. I've been wanting to read this for a long, long time. I'm talking years. And so I'm happy I finally picked it up. And yeah, it was a good read overall. There's no other way to put it. I don't remember any one story, like no one story stands out dramatically to me, but I know that I enjoyed the reading experience. The next book I finished was Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, which was narrated by Breed Brennan. This book follows Kushla, who's a teacher in Northern Ireland, as she gets into a dalliance with a Catholic teacher who gets into a dalliance with a Protestant barrister, and the fallout from that one relationship. And then at the very end, it jumps to a future in which some of those decisions she made at that point in, I want to say, the 70s, have come to bear on not just her life, but on the lives of many other people in her life. It was an interesting read. I find affairs difficult to deal with in literature and in real life. But on the whole, it was an interesting read. I enjoyed reading it, listening to it, and it's very well read. Like, I think it's one of those times when I've read on Goodreads that it doesn't have quotation marks, for instance, and things like those, but this is one of those times when the audiobook is superior in my experience anyway, because you're not caught up in the punctuation, for instance, of the book and so on. Lastly, this is a bonus book because I'm going to start doing weekly roundups, and this is from the week when August ended. The first book I finished in September, which I finished yesterday. Yesterday was the 3rd of September, but I'm going to talk about the books I finished up to September 10th, the next time I'm in front of a camera. So here we are. Is The English Experience by Julie Schumacher. I did this as a hybrid read and it's narrated by the author. So this is the last of the J. Fitka books. In this one, he takes a group of students to England and tries to make an educational experience out of it, but they're having none of it. I'm talking, they're just making stuff up as they go along, and he gets quite frustrated and so on. And in the end, he is forced to reconcile with certain ideas he has about himself, his life, and so on, while also extending grace to these students who he's only just met and who are doing the best they can with what they have, honestly. So that's it. That's all the books I finished in August and a bonus book that I finished at the very beginning of September. I hope to be able to go back to weekly roundups because this is so tough, my homies. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and all the good things. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.